On Fox 8 Sports, this is the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
Three receivers to the far side for Taysom Hill. He drops back, has a good pocket, down the sideline, wide open. Austin Carr in for the touchdown, and New Orleans with their first of the day, 27 yards.
The preseason is pushed past the halfway point for the Black and Gold. Welcome into the Black and Gold Review Show. Deuce McAllister, Sean Vazan, I'm Juan Kincaid. 2 games down, 2 more to go, but still a lot to learn.
Definitely a lot to learn, and when you look at this game, it was a victory, but it almost feels like a defeat in a lot of senses, in a lot of ways. I mean, one, I think it starts with the injuries, but I think overall how they played it, you're happy that you're able to come back and win, but man, there's a lot of work to be done.
A lot of hot and a lot of cold in this game.
Yes.
It just seemed to be a little all over the place. They got the win, so that obviously helps. But, yeah, I'm with you guys. A lot to work on.
It's preseason football. Always something to get right and get better. All right, let's get you right to the headlines. A lot to talk about tonight. Headline number 1, tale of 2 halves. First, Teddy Bridgewater's struggles. Tale of 2 halves. Teddy struggled with throwing the ball. Teddy's solid game 1 outing, followed up by a performance to forget in game number 2 for the Saints. Just 5 for 12, 40 yards, and a pick inside the red zone. Hearing that he was under the weather, but he played anyway. I'll ask you guys, how much do we attribute his poor performance to how he was feeling?
Well, I think you have to contribute. I think that contributes to it a little bit, but even Teddy manned up and owned it that, he has to play better. He knows he has to play better. And here's one of the things that you have to take into consideration. There's only going to be so many quarters that he is going to be playing. There's only so many snaps for him, particularly when you talk about preseason. So if he doesn't go that game, he may be only looking at maybe a quarter, another quarter and a half, maybe 3 quarters total in the next 2 games that he'll get to play. So I can understand him wanting to play, but at the same time, the performance is what it is, and it was not good.
Look, it wasn't good. He was inaccurate. He was indecisive. He was a little erratic. He's still having trouble coming off that first read. It's really something that I picked up on him with him. It's when the throw calls for him to get past that first read in the progression. If it's not a check down, he seems to struggle a little bit. Well, he's got to bounce back. Look, did the sickness help? Absolutely not. Clearly, he was not himself. The energy was just bad. The body language was just bad. He just looked tired, so to speak. So that certainly played a role. But at the end of the day, he owned it. He knew he has to play better. He didn't play that good. He just got to bounce back and play better.
If I'm picking up what you guys are putting down, instead he should be playing better football. Should we expect more from Teddy because he is a former starter in this league and a proven starter in this league, and now he's in a backup role? Well,
I think that you expect more because you've seen the talent that he displays week in and week out as far as practice is concerned, and you want to see the growth in this offense for him because you know that he has the capability of doing it, but then to go out and not play to that standard, I think that's where you're expecting him to be better as a player.
I said last week, after last week's performance, I want to see a few of those in a row. I haven't seen it yet. That's where I'm at with Teddy right now. So just a little up and down. Hopefully by the end of the preseason, he will have grown enough within this offense. But I view him as a starting quarterback. So maybe my grading scale is a little different with him. I'm not looking at him as a backup. Looking at him as a starter, and that's why I think he's been a little up and down, a little inconsistent.
But how much do you think him being a backup in this system, and we've seen highs and lows from him, maybe hurting his chances of becoming a starter in this league again?
I don't think it necessarily hurts. I mean, you have to understand the amount of reps that he is going to get, and right now they probably do split those numbers, and depending on what week they're in and what they want to give as far as how many reps each player is getting. I mean, but for the more reps that he can get as a starting quarterback or as a quarterback that you're going to play, the better off he's going to be.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure what this preseason would do as far as him being a starter at some point in the NFL. I think it's probably too early to answer that question.
Okay. All right, headline number 2, again, tale of 2 halves, Taysom Hill. Taysom thrives, built off of last week's performance against the Vikings, 11 of 15 in this game, 136 passing, 2 touchdowns versus the Chargers. It seems his grasp of the offense is the reason for his confidence in the position. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I think he's grown within the offense. I think he's figured out that level of patience versus athleticism. I just think he's getting a little bit better, a little more seasoning. And look, when you're in this system for that long, you'd like to see some growth, and he's shown that growth. I thought he was the best player on the field in the second half. I thought he took over the game, in particular towards the end of the game. But the way he ran the ball, the way he threw the ball, the way he went through his progressions, I thought he was patient when he had to be. I thought it was a very good effort for Taysom Hill.
He looked like a quarterback, and not an athlete playing quarterback. He looked like a pure quarterback. There was no, okay, let me take off. My first option is not there. He was able to go to his second option, third option, and really when he was truly flushed out of the pocket, that's where you see him just be a natural athlete. You know, anytime Taysom takes off, he wants to run the guy over, you know, and as a quarterback, you want to, look, get down, slide, get out of bounds. But, you know, he's a competitor, and he just looked really, really comfortable yesterday.
It was interesting after the game. He talked about how Sean Payton mentioned to the guys at half he was very disappointed with how the offense played, understandably. And Taysom seemed to take it upon himself to say, you know what, I've got to be the one to get us out of this funk.
And that is not just preseason. We saw that last year, whether it was a block punt or a fake punt or a tackle or a catch or a zone replay. He is instant energy, and he's instant emotion. And in a game like that, Deuce, you were there, I was there. It was kind of funky going into halftime. They had just had the punt return. It went to the locker room not looking good at all. And all of a sudden, he comes out. First drive was 3 and out. Second drive was 3 and out. Then all of a sudden, he hit that spark and bang. He was on. And I think he is instant emotion. And Sean Payton said it afterwards. That is real.
Yeah.
That is real when he goes on the field, regardless of preseason, regular season, postseason.
And I think the one thing that he's able to do is really, you know, give that offense some rhythm. And I think that was the one thing that they didn't have that first half was just rhythm. It was always one play, two plays. Okay, we're going to back up. We make a mistake, or, you know, we have to punt. I think they were able to just to string some first down together and find some rhythm.
Really quickly, what are the chances we have a backup quarterback controversy by the time these 4 weeks are over if Taysom continues to play at this level?
If it happens, it happens.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think Taysom's going to have his role, and I think his role is the Swiss Army knife this year.
Okay. All right, Ted, move to headline number 3. Red zone woes, 1 for 3 versus the Vikings, 1 for 5 against the Chargers. Added up, 2 for 8 overall. Some will say wait till Drew Brees plays, but is it as simple as that?
Yes and no. I think it's a lot of pressure that you put on Drew when you make him have to be, you know, he has to cover up so many mistakes that you're making as a unit. You know, it's one thing to be able to get in the red zone, but to get inside the 10 and have 2 turnovers, 1 an interception, 1 a fumble, those are just things that you cannot do. And, you know, you talk about having some penalties as far as false starts, some holdings last week, some penalties on a touchdown run. So those are just things that you have to be able to clean up, because once the regular season starts, this can't be something that carries over.
Well, that loses games right there, Deuce. Inside the red zone, not getting points or not getting touchdowns instead of getting threes, or in some cases like yesterday, getting turnovers, that loses games. So they've got to get that figured out, because, like I said, in the NFL, it's so razor thin that can mean the difference of wins and losses.
Where's the disconnect with this football team when they get into the opponent's red zone? Is it lacking a sense of urgency at that point? Is it that simple?
No, I don't think it's urgency. I think it's execution. I mean, because I think the plays are there for them to be able to go in and execute. I just think it's execution. And so a lot of times, even though this may be your second and third unit, sometimes making those mistakes, and they may not get the reps that the ones get, you still have to take advantage of the opportunities as well.
Execution really comes down to concentration as well. I just felt like they were a little sloppy on their details inside the red zone.
Headline number 4, first team defense delivers. Saints starting defense had their way with the Chargers early on against Tyrod Taylor. They limited them to just 2 first downs on the first 4 drives. Also came with an interception with A.J. Klein. What changed from game 1 to game 2 with this defense?
I think it was a locked in. Those guys were really focused and locked in to detail and playing assignment type of football. Regardless if you've got Phillip Rivers and some of those other stars, they were determined to say, hey, look, I will take care of my job. I will do my job. And then we saw Dennis Allen even dial up some pressure as well. You know, there were two times that he ran corner blitzes, both corners being able to blitz. We saw a strong safety blitz out of Von Bell. You saw the slot being able to blitz coming off of the edge. So they were able to bring pressure, but even then they were still able to get in the backfield with some of just their pure 4-man rush.
They brought a double corner blitz with Lattimore
Twice.
And Eli Apple and got a sack. They were dialed in. They were embarrassed about the way they started the game last week. They wanted to clean that up. They did so. I thought they looked great. I thought in particular DeMario Davis really looked locked in. I thought linebackers the whole play great, but I thought DeMario Davis really stood out.
What's the one thing that's still missing from this defense as we go into preseason game number 3 and 4?
Well, I think the one thing that is the overall depth. You know, you probably have some concern with some of those young guys playing as many snaps as they are, and I know right now you want to see what they can handle, but you want to make sure that you can play, you know, whether it's too deep, true 2 deep, or to make sure that, you know, if somebody gets banged up, you're okay with the sub that's coming in for them.
Still got to see it from Marcus Davenport.
Yeah.
Still got to see it.
I knew it was going to be
He
that
came close. He came close
Yeah.
yesterday, but still got to see it from Marcus Davenport.
Headline number 5. We may talk about that next week, too. Headline number 5, lacking coverage. Special teams. The Chargers, it seemed to be that they outplayed the Saints specialists. Troy Pope with the biggest play of the game, a 81-yard touchdown return. 3 Saints there to make the tackle, none do. Happy it happened now because there's concern of the coverage units right now, or is this just a one-time thing and let's move on to the next thing?
Well, I don't think you're ever happy whenever you get, one gets housed and taken to the house for you. But if you go and look, Sorrell Grayson gets blocked in the back right there, and so that should have been a flag as far as a penalty is concerned. But there is, I know the traction as far as the field played a part of it. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had a chance. He's got to pull the trigger. You've seen him probably get fussed at a little, even in practice, by pulling the trigger when he has a shot on a returner and you're that gunner. You have to do it. I mean, you can't hesitate. Even if you miss, you force him to 2 guys that are sitting there waiting on you. And so it's disappointing when this happens because you know that they put in time when you talk about special teams.
Yeah.
I mean, they really put in time when you talk about coverage. And so it's disappointing whenever that happens, regardless of you're talking about the field, whether it's a block in the back, a holding that doesn't get called. You don't want that to happen.
Essentially, it was a walk-off, too. It was right before the end of the half. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson came in too hard. I mean, it's like he lost control of himself and got easily juked, and he was off to the races. So not a good thing if you're Sean Payton. He did not like that.
Something more to work on. Coming up, Sean Vazan breaks down the tape on Taysom Hill's touchdown pass to Austin Carr. And we'll answer your questions like, what will Hill's role in the offense be this season? And be sure to subscribe to the Fox 8 Overtime podcast for more Saints analysis on demand. You can find the podcast on fox8live.com, the Final Play app, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Stay with us.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
Welcome back into the Black and Gold Review Show. Time to talk about Taysom. Quite the different quarterback now than this time a year ago, Sean.
I would agree. And you know what? We talked a lot about Taysom, regardless of where he stands on the depth chart. I think it's obvious he's made great strides within this offense. We know he's an athlete, but as a true quarterback, he's grown. One play illustrates this perfectly, his touchdown pass to Austin Carr. Let's start with the alignment. Cyril Grayson on the outside. Austin Carr in the slot with A.J. Derby next to him. Sammy Cobbs is the lone receiver on the opposite side. The routes are Grayson on the post, Carr on the wheel, Derby on a short curl, Devine Ozigbo to the flat, and Cobbs, who runs a shallow cross. Pre-snap, the Chargers are showing cover 2 with 2 safeties back deep. But on the snap, one safety rotates down while the other goes to the center, signaling a single high cover 1. The key to this play is what happens with the corner, Kemen Hall, and the nickel, Arian Springs. Hall stays with Grayson on the post, which vacates the sideline. Springs initially looks like he's running with Carr. Had he stayed on Carr, Hill may have went to Ozigbo, but then Springs stays down to guard the flat. When Hill saw this, he knew that based on the concept and the defense they were in, that Hall would not be able to peel off Grayson in time and Carr would pop wide open, which is exactly what he did. Touchdown Saints. Now, Carr joked today that he was the 4th or 5th read on that play, and the ball never goes to him when they run it. This is what I mean by growth. Hill had the patience to let that play develop. He read the defense, something he may not have done at this time last year. And I also want to point out, great protection on that play as well.
Outstanding protection. I mean, because to be able to get to your 5th option or 4th option, you have to have the line blocking, and they did an outstanding job.
Very, very busy mailbag. Ready to get to some questions?
Let's do it.
Let's do it right now. Submit it on the Final Play app using that final word feature. This question comes in from Tyler Walsdorf from Mandeville. Wants to know, do you think Taysom Hill's run-pass option will play a bigger part this season?
It all depends on, I think, the opponent. The one thing that you don't want to do is Taysom to be able to get hurt, and then he's not able to come in and make plays for you. You know, we've seen Sean use this, and based off of the opponent and how they play run-pass option, you know, that just depends on how much they run it.
I like the run-pass option. I like the zone read. But one thing I would incorporate a little bit, I think Deuce, I don't know if you saw this, I think he's good off that naked bootleg. I think he does a pretty good job faking the handoff, rolling out. He's dangerous on the edge. I would maybe incorporate that a little bit. I don't know if you can incorporate that package with Drew's on the field, but still, I think he's grown in that regard as well.
Well, it's always tough to take the ball out of number 9 hands.
Yes.
I mean, so if you're doing so and letting Taysom play more quarterback, that's what you're doing.
All right, up next, going right back to the mailbag where everyone wants to know who is leading the wide receiver competition.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
All right, time to get back into the mailbag here on Black and Gold Review Show. You've got questions. Our guys have all the answers, and this question is a good one. How close is the competition between Cyril Grayson, Simmie Cobbs Jr., Lil Jordan Humphreys, Trayvon Durrell, and Emmanuel Butler for possibly 1 or 2 spots at wide receiver, with it being so deep and talented this season? Who do you think has the edge right now? From Todd and Marrero. Great question. Guys, what do you think?
That's a lot of players that you lumped into one.
Is Austin Carr even on that list?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think Austin's on the list. Or
no.
Keith Kirkwood.
Yeah, Keith Kirkwood. You know, the one player I would say that right now that has that edge is probably Emmanuel Butler, even though he had a catch that, I mean, he had the ball bounce off of his face mask when you talk about it. I think he's just been more consistent in practice overall. He just came back from injury, and, you know, this was his first action as far as the game is concerned. I think all those other guys have a chance, and they just have to keep showing up and keep proving it, you know, when you talk about maybe locking one of those other spots in.
I don't think it's going to go this way, but who I personally believe is in the lead, I like Simmie Cobbs. I like his size. He seems to catch a lot of passes. He seems to be in the right spot a good bit. I don't know if he blocks well, but he seems to be. And look, Sean Payton loves Austin Carr, so I think he's always got a chance as well. So that, but I can't give you a leader right now just because it's so tight towards that bottom end of the wide receiver depth chart.
And that competition is going to come down to the last game anyway.
Yes, it is.
You know, I don't think that'll be something that will be decided this upcoming game against the Jets. It'll come down to the last week against Miami.
Our next question comes from Austin in Louisiana. Do you think Latavius Murray will play better than Mark Ingram did last year?
Is this a fantasy question?
Sounds like it to me.
Fantasy football
He's about
question?
to make his draft.
Yeah, the one thing that you know about Latavius Murray, inside the red zone or inside the 10 or 20, he has been money as far as scoring touchdown. I don't know if you'll get the overall production from Latavius Murray that Mark was able to put up. You know, if you do, then that's great. But I know that he will be able to run and get some of the tough yardage. And then when you talk about being in the red zone scoring, he's had a knack for doing that.
I think he's more of a 10 to 15 carry guy. So I'm trying to visualize what Mark Ingram had. Last year, Mark Ingram's carries were down. So I could see it being about equal to Ingram last year because I think Murray's going to get a lot of, like you said, Deuce, a lot of red zone touches as well.
All right, still to come, Deontay Harris has flashed the type of return ability that has not been seen in black and gold in quite some time. What should we expect of him going forward?
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
We have reached the home stretch here on the Black and Gold Review Show, and we're back in the mailbag. A lot of questions from fans. This one coming from Joshua Gus in Gentilly. He says, how about how many kick return touchdowns will Deontay Harris have this season? He says, I know for a fact he'll have at least one if he stays healthy.
Joshua, he's got to make it first. I mean, I would love for him to be able to return maybe one in the preseason here, but, you know, you talk about the regular season, it's going to definitely turn up, and, you know, you just have to make sure, particularly when you're on some of those punts, you have to field as many of them as possible, and that's one of the things that he's still a work in progress. I mean, you talk about the college game being different, where it's a lot of Aussie-style kicks that he has to catch. It's a little bit different in the NFL.
I think he breaks one in the preseason. I think he breaks one. He has become close and close and close and close. Look, I know he made a few mistakes yesterday, but you cannot ignore his return yardage yesterday, and it really helped the offense. I think it fed off the field position that he provided. Plus, he had one called back. So I think he gets one but in the preseason.
50 yards returning kicks, 55 yards returning punts on 5 different punts, 11-yard average. He's doing the business. Our next question comes from Ron in Covington. Says, Deuce, what's the big deal with this year's helmets?
It is about the protection of the players. These guys knew going into really this year. Last year was your grace period. And if anybody knows, it's really Drew's helmet. If you go back and you look at Drew's old helmet to what he is wearing now, it is, the concussion policy. And Antonio Brown, he's the one player that is fussing about it. And these helmets, they had to go through a test. And once they were put through a test, if they failed, you can't wear them anymore. Last year was the grace period for the players. You knew coming into this season you couldn't wear it.
Yeah.
We see the big fuss with AB, though.
All right, our next question is for Sean Vazan. Offensive line depth, especially at tackle, has to be a concern. Is Jamon Bushrod, former Saints veteran, an option since he did a decent job last year when Armstead went down? We know Armstead is going to go down eventually. That's from Chuck Hill and Ponchatoula.
Look, I thought I saw Bushrod tweet something, a picture of the word retired the other day, so maybe he's called it a career. Maybe he's a phone call away. I love the depth along the interior. But on the exterior, I don't like it at all. I think the reserve tackle situation is very real. I think it's the biggest vulnerability on this team. So if Bushrod is available and you don't have any other options, I would give him a call.
I'm looking for Armstead to be healthy for 16. I don't want him to go down.
You're looking for that, huh?
I'm looking for it, but Bushrod, I did see the picture, and, his phone probably is, they hadn't called him, they're trying to gauge some interest because, with some of those guys that they brought in yesterday getting banged up, we don't know where they stand, but, he would be an option if they have to go that direction.
All right, we'll see going forward. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night for Fox 8 Overtime when we'll have more Saints talk as well as a look at all the big stories in South Louisiana sports this week. We'll answer your viewer questions as well, so keep getting those into us. Final Play app, Final Word feature, and be sure to watch Fox 8 Overtime every Tuesday night at 10:35. Until then, for Deuce, Sean, and everyone here at Fox 8, I'm Juan Kincaid. Thanks for watching. Our next newscast is at 4:30 in the morning. Have a great night.
This has been the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series. Celebrate